Hello, everyone. Welcome to this panel discussion as part of the Lytham Partners Fall 2022 Investor Conference. Lytham Partners is one of the country's leading investor relations firms with more than 2 decades of corporate access experience. We have built one of the industry's most diverse and effective platforms for connecting small cap companies with high quality and focused institutional investors while creating a framework of best practices in all aspects of investor relations. Today's discussion is hopefully yet another example where we can bring value to multiple constituents. Today's panel explores how some of the companies are working to help people and governments achieve energy security while making sure there's ample energy to power existing needs and future growth. The closing of economies during the pandemic and now geopolitical concerns have caused certain shortages and supply issues in many things, especially energy. Many investors and economists believe that these issues we have now entered into a new super cycle of sorts in the energy industry. Simultaneously, there is a large desire to decarbonize the world by using less carbon-based products and employing more environmentally friendly energy sources. While many renewables have been and are being deployed, they come with their own drawbacks and at times aren't always reliable and can cause disruptions or havoc to grids around the world. So what is the proper balance? How should an investor view the current environment and what kind of cycle are we in? Are we entering a new energy super cycle? And if so, how's it going to look given all the new types of energy sources and new technologies to employ these energy sources? Today, we have the pleasure to host 2 CEOs of companies that are working towards helping energy security and work directly with companies involved in the energy industry. We're also very lucky to have a nice cross-section of companies with us today that each focus on a different source of energy: nuclear, oil, and gas, also at times referred to as LNG. I'm now going to conduct a roll call and introduce each participant. After I introduce you, please briefly tell us what your company does and how it helps the energy industry. Kyle Loudermilk is the CEO and president of GSE Systems, ticker symbol of GVP, that is Golf Victor Peter on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange. Kyle also serves as a member of the company's board of directors. He's a technology executive whose 25-year career has focused on growing technology companies through organic growth, geographic expansion, and M&A, creating significant shareholder value along the way. Kyle, welcome, and please tell us a little bit about GSE and how it helps the energy industry.
Well, thanks, Adam. Delighted to be here, so thanks for having me. GSE is a company I can trace its roots back almost 70 years. Specifically, we've been a public company since the mid-90s, and we are focused today on delivering advanced engineering, tech-enabled engineering services, technology solutions, and flexible workforce solutions, primarily focused on the nuclear power industry and adjacencies. This is really helping the country and the clients that we serve to support a stable grid, energy security, and work towards decarbonization of the power sector.
Great, thank you for that overview. Our next panelist is Mr. Jim Rakievich, who is appointed president and CEO of Edmonton-based McCoy Global. That's ticker symbol of NCB, that is Mike Charlie Bravo on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and MCCRF, that is Mike Charlie Charlie Romeo Foxtrot in the US. Jim is also a member of the company's board of directors. With key strategic acquisitions, the launch of McCoy's innovative product line and expanding operations into the United States as well as into the Eastern Hemisphere, Mr. Rakievich has led the company's evolution to become a provider of technical solutions and services for the global energy market. Jim, welcome, and please tell us a little about McCoy Global and how it's helping the energy industry.
Well, thank you, Adam, and like Kyle, really appreciate the invitation to participate in your panel today. Yes, McCoy Global, it's I got you beat a little, Kyle. We're 108 years old. But I haven't been around that long. And the company has a strong tradition of being based in Alberta, having tentacles into the oil and gas industry. And that's currently the case today. We design and produce technologies that enable the safe and efficient methods and technologies to run casing in wells, land and offshore. We ship our technologies to average of 50 countries a year. As was said by Lyle, we operate in the US, and our Eastern Hemisphere operations are based out of Dubai. And every well that's drilled for gas or oil they run casing in those wells. And it sounds easy to screw a bunch of pipes together and put them in the ground, and you got a cased well, but it's very complex, especially with long laterals and very deep, ultra deep water wells. The casing connection is all about the integrity of that well going forward. And our job is to ensure that our clients who run that casing can do the best job possible, both through mechanical technologies and data acquisition. And as we're moving forward into the future, going into much more automation with data-driven solutions as opposed to human intervention. Much safer, more efficient, greater wellbore integrity. That's us.
Thanks, Jim, for that overview. Now let's jump into our discussion today titled Energy Investing, the Next Supercycle. Is it carbon-based or green or both? So let's get right to it. Here's a question for both our panelists. We'll start with Kyle. How would you characterize the current state of the energy industry?
Well, energy, particularly as it relates to the generation of electrical power, is very much in a transition period. If we look at the US grid as an example, we get today roughly 60% of our power from fossil-based fuels. That isn't much change from where we were 20 years ago, but the mix of that has changed quite significantly, shifting from coal, and that has decreased to only, which used to be up to 50% of our power mix, down to 20%, and the balance is made up by natural gas and the abundance of natural gas. 20% comes from nuclear. Again, that's not much changed from 20 years ago, and about 14% or thereabouts comes from renewables, or excuse me, 20% comes from renewables, 6% of that being hydroelectric. Again, not much change since 20 years ago, but the balance being provided by wind, solar sources, which didn't really produce at industrial scale 20 years ago. So it's in a state of flux. As we move forward, there's obviously a large desire to decarbonize the grid, have a net zero grid by 2035. And that's just around the corner when you think about it. So our nation, Western nations in particular, for different reasons and different priorities, are looking to ensure a safe and stable grid with domestic sources of power while weaning ourselves off of fossil power. But it's fair to say fossil will be here for quite some time. Just the mix will shift for the electrical grid, at least, to mostly LNG, with the objective of eliminating coal in most Western countries.
Jim, how would you characterize the current state of the energy industry?
Certainly, Kyle nailed it. That one word was going to, is the right word, is transition. But this transition's been around for a few decades, but transitions are like that. They're like revolutions, like the Industrial Revolution. They start slowly, and but there's a lot of different, I think, different pressures that both political and from the public to address climate change and for the right reasons. And so I see the energy transition ramping up. We're seeing much more renewables than we ever have before. It does, I think nuclear has got a great opportunity to solve a lot of the global energy requirements in the future. It's just going to take some time to get the acceptance for that technology. Clearly, coal is on its way out and leaving. Yes, they're doing a little more now because suddenly there's a energy shortage in some countries. But in our business, we think natural gas is going to be here for quite some time to provide a cleaner fossil fuel-based energy source. And I always try to think of it this way: is there's still in the undeveloped world a tremendous amount of folks without energy that don't have power. And the demand of the undeveloped countries is where we're going to have to address. How are we going to provide those people with power, reliable energy in the future. And it's going to take a combination of all of the above sources of energy, I believe.
Jim, let's go right back at you here. What has been the impact of regulations, specifically going green initiatives or requirements? What impact has that had on your industry?
Well, it's had I would call it a geographical impact. So in North America, it's had a impact. I'll go specifically to some of the decisions made on, for example, pipelines, both in Canada and the US. I mean, the very first decision that was made by the US President Biden was to cancel a pipeline. So, and we have a lot of difficulty in Canada going through all of the regulations and approval hurdles to build, to get natural gas and oil to Tidewater so that we can get to LNG and get the natural gas to countries that need reliable energy. So it's had an impact on our company because it's restricted the amount of capital being spent on exploring for new oil and gas reserves and increased production. What it has done specifically for us, though, is it shifted, and thankfully we're an international, we operate globally, and so the activity that we're experiencing right now is the majority of it is coming out of the Eastern Hemisphere, predominantly in the OPEC countries, not including Russia.
Kyle, what has been the impact of regulation, specifically going green initiatives or requirements, have had on your industry and your business?
Well, nuclear power industry is a heavily regulated industry, and for good reason, for safety and vitality of the industry. It makes sense. What we found, though, is that regulation is often used as a hammer to prevent the expansion of an essential component of the energy mix to achieve, really three goals. One is to decarbonize the grid, and so everybody would have the access to clean, fresh air and carbon-free power 24/7. Basically in 24 hours a day. The winds may not blow as much during and on a steady basis throughout the day. And we know that sunlight is only available during the day. So to keep the grid going and power flowing through the grid, you have to have what's called baseload in the power industry that produces power 24/7. Nuclear is really the only game in town besides hydroelectric, which is also shrinking, and for good reason when you look at environmental impact. So regulation, while it should be used as a conduit to allow the expansion of these essential services, often is exploited for political reasons to prevent the nation from achieving the very goals it states. So that's the environmental goals, as I mentioned. Also, energy security, as we're seeing in Western Europe. The path to energy security, it's very clear that having a safe and stable domestic source of energy for countries that may not have oil and gas underneath the ground in their territories. Again, nuclear has proven to be a very essential source of energy when it comes to energy security, national security. And these plants, when they're built, they can be extended, their lifetimes can be extended through capital investment and deployment of intellectual capabilities. They can run to 100 years. And we're already looking at certain plants that through investment are looking for lifetime extensions to 100 years. Canada is a leader in this area with Bruce Power and Ontario Power. Really well-run companies, and the country has a national energy policy that's fairly cogent. The United States will put out regulations, but independent often of energy policy goals. So sometimes they're even at conflict. So this is something that I think ultimately is going to have to be addressed by governments, especially in the Western worlds that are democratic cultures, democratic governments rather, where the growing consensus that Jim mentioned has to continue, and a global recognition that nuclear power has to be here to stay, has to be invested in to be safe and run for the long term, and also expand that coal that 20% of our power mix that comes from coal is going to go away. And the only way to backstop that is through LNG and or nuclear power for 24/7 power. So to balance that, you have to have both. I think there is a recognition that this is an essential thing that needs to happen. But to build these plants takes a lot of money and investment, and it takes a long time. And so that means we need to have a stable regulatory environment to do that and predictable. So, those are some of the top concerns of our customers and therefore for us as well.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Jim. Let's go back to Kyle. Who are some of your customers and what is their reaction to what's going on in the energy industry right now? How are they approaching this super cycle, carbon or non-carbon or both?
Right. Well, it's a good question. And I think just as the energy industry is in transition, we see many of our customers who are effectively utility companies that own and operate nuclear power plants. They're also in transition in their thinking, and there's so much at flux on the regulatory side, absence of a clear and long-term and stable energy policy. There's a wait and see attitude in many regards from the industry to determine where to invest, how to invest, and will that investment be safe given all the moving parts related to the political environment, regulatory environment, which is driven from politics and the like. So that is, at a high level, I would say that's how customers are thinking. It's a wait and see from big capital investment. There's also some new reactor technologies coming out that will help lower capital risk. Incremental and scalable investment is available through these small modular reactors that are inherently safe. And this is a great opportunity for industry to move forward.
Jim, who are some of your customers and what is their reaction, to what's going on in the energy industry? How are they approaching things to this new super cycle, carbon or non-carbon or both?
Well, our base customers are service companies that go out to the field, land and offshore, and perform their services for the operators. The end user, the people that actually buy the casing and own the casing and own the well are the British Petroleums, the Exxons, the Shells, and so on and so forth. The big multinationals, E&P companies, have clearly demonstrated and have enacted on green strategies as another channel where they're placing capital, and that capital is going away from the drill bit for sure. And so if you look at the amount of capital that is being deployed for exploration in particular, and because exploration, as we know, is riskier than going into known fields and just getting another well producing, the amount of capital going into exploration has declined. What that does, though, is it allows those that are either private operators or others to take advantage of the high energy prices like we're experiencing right now in crude oil and gas, and continue to drill and produce both oil and gas. Almost all of our large cap customers, like Baker Hughes, for example, that we do directly sell to, they clearly have allocated a significant amount of time and effort into looking towards what is the long-term future of their typically oil and gas focused business, and how do we go into alternative energy and greener sources. And some of them have net zero plans into the long future. So they have reacted to what is being discussed about where the global discussion is around climate change and reducing the carbon footprint. There's no question about that. So our direct customers, the service companies, if you're in the Eastern Hemisphere, you're really busy, because the one thing that we can't deny is consumption. And the globe is short of natural gas. Western Europe, as Kyle described, they're in an energy crisis as we speak, going into a winter. And in the shorter, medium term, I actually think very much similar to Kyle, is that in the and the best solutions are a combination of natural gas and nuclear. Those two are longstanding, cleaner, very impactful on carbon footprint technologies that are available now and are pretty darn safe, and we can supply a lot of energy to the market globally.
So on that subject, Jim, then we'll go to Kyle. But Jim, how long do you see the state of this energy crisis lasting?
Oh, the energy crisis is it's an interesting question. I would say that I would prefer to call it the energy transition, which is going to be whenever there's a transition that's driven politically, in my view, is always going to be lumpier. When it's driven by industry figures this stuff out. But when it's driven through direct intervention with the governments, like what's going on, it's going to be lumpy. So the transition is what I'd rather call it than a cycle. It's going to take some time. I think we've got probably anywhere from 20 to 50 years of transition before we see meaningful change to where those that would like it by 2030 to happen, because that's not possible.
Kyle, how long do you see the state of the energy crisis lasting?
Yeah, I share Jim's perspective. This is a multi-decade long process, and it's really been underway and goes through different phases based on the innovation and new technologies that come along. So, of course, with the advent of nuclear power commercially in 70s, 80s, 90s, that was revolutionary in many ways. And the nuclear power industry is far more robust, far safer, far more scrutinous than it has ever been. So it's prepared to, extend well into the future, and will have to in order to achieve these goals that we mentioned. The oil and gas industry went through a revolution with horizontal drilling and fracking. I used to work for Mobil Oil, so I'm very familiar with oil and gas production, and so that was another energy revolution. It made the United States, North America, energy exporters, for the first time since, I believe, the 60s. And that's transformed the global landscape for energy. So when we really get to the electrical grid, which is where our company's GSE is focused, we want a net zero economy by 2050. That already lays out a goal that's decades out, and a net zero grid by 2035. Another 15 plus years ahead of us. Largely recognizing, to get to net zero by 2035, probably impractical unless we move really quickly in ways we're not currently moving quickly in. So this is a multi-decades transition. It will be policy and politics driven by the nature of it. I think if the economy were left to evolve on its own, we'd be driving gas cars forever. So it's really the government saying you can't do that anymore at some point. And so that's one example of how this is ultimately going to be driven by policy and politics. And to the extent they can stabilize both politics and policy and lay a roadmap out that all industry, private sector, government sector, countries working with each other can align to and commit to and sustain, we'll get there quicker than if it's not aligned. And it'll be less bumpy if we're aligned, more bumpy if we don't work through these policy issues. So I guess that's my long-winded answer. Is it's a multi-decade process. It'll be smoother with better policy and political environment, I think, than current status. So hopefully that drives as we move forward.
So back to you, Kyle. I guess we've established that there is a transition. Fossil fuels are needed to bridge that gap to a green future. But, as a CEO, how does one manage a transition when the time frame is unknown?
Yeah, and as public company CEOs, we know time frames usually don't last more than a quarter at a time, so we're under a lot of pressure. I think the first thing to manage this is to set reasonable expectations and be transparent in communications about status of industry. to set both external goals and internal goals to be realistic. Second is 100% dedication to the mission. Make sure that we're tight with our customers so that despite the bumps, we're still around and aligned to how they respond to the bumps. And it sounds simpler than it is. It's a lot of time out with customers, a lot of time making sure we're doing a good job in delivering technology and products that add value every day to them. Make sure they're educated and aware of that value, and ensure again that we're in sync with where our customers are going, and get ahead of them a little bit of education and help them set their goals to be in line with what we're able to do.
And back to you, Jim. How do you manage this transition when the time frame is unknown?
Well, it's similar to what Kyle described. It's as public company CEOs, we live quarter to quarter, but our strategic planning does not. Our technology roadmap that we unveiled, 3.5 years ago, and we did a couple of acquisitions that were adjacent to that were a critical part of us moving forward. Those are multi-year projects, but bring a tremendous amount of value, both number one to our customers, and then number two to the shareholders when adoption comes in. And we can message to all of our shareholders that the kind of communication we're having here today is that this is a multi-decade transition that's taking place, and our job at McCoy is to do our very best to make sure that we're developing the latest technologies to improve safety and reduce the amount of people required to be in a dangerous area of the drilling rig, have our customers make better decisions, and more importantly for the environment, have better wellbore integrity. So we like to accomplish all of those things. We're excited because the market, and Kyle, you mentioned you'd been in my industry for a while. You would probably recognize that, for a long period of time, change in this industry always didn't come easily, new technology, etc. But we're starting to see a different outlook from our customers, where technology is being welcomed and asked for in order for them to achieve their goals, because they want to have a less of a carbon footprint doing their job, even developing gas fields and things like that. So I think there's a good opportunity for us over those several decades of transition to continue to develop technologies that continue to help our customers do everything safer, faster, more efficiently, and less carbon footprint.
So we have time for maybe a couple more questions here. Jim, I'll go back to you. What are some recent achievements your company has made or are going to make that you like to share with the audience when it comes to the future of the energy industry?
Well, I'll go back to the technologies that we've been very much focused on and are very committed to, and those are in bringing automation to a process that for decades has been a manual, always do it the same way focus, with using experienced people to make decisions, right or wrong, to have a process that had very little automation, and had continued to provide risk on the side of safety. Ultimately, the owner of the well is the E&P company, the operators. And so what we're really proud of is we're getting very close. We've proven most of our technologies that are part of our package, and now we're going through some very exciting field trials with positive results in bringing that automation and technology to the industry. And so that's pretty exciting. And as a side note, when we did one of those acquisitions, we acquired a sensor company, based out of just outside of Austin. And their core competency when that company started was it was to provide data acquisition solutions in harsh environments very accurately. So that part of our business also not only serves the oil and gas industry, but we serve the nuclear industry. We service the military, aerospace, and construction, providing wireless digital data in harsh environments in very critical areas.
And Kyle, what are some of the recent achievements your company has made or are going to make that you'd like to share with the audience when it comes to the future of the energy industry?
Yeah, I to follow up on the theme that Jim highlighted, which is the use of technology. So GSE has invested quite heavily to create technology products from all that know-how that we have so that we can package our IP and license it to industry for continuous use and improvement, whether it be workforce training, producing more power, operating more safely, or as we're seeing with SMR customer like NewScale, using our technology to design a better product for them upfront, we call front-end engineering and design. So that really is helping to transform our business. Nuclear is not the fastest moving industry, and for good reason again, but we're trying to move as much faster to deploy this technology to industry to add greater value to them at incremental costs. Using technology is far cheaper than hiring people, investing in capital assets. If that can make a market improvement in operations across many dimensions, we're seeing that unfold. So the investment in technology, productizing and licensing of technology is something that we're very much focused on. Additionally, we have our company today really is the result of bringing a number of companies together and aggregating them and integrating them into what GSE is today. We're very different than we were 7 years ago. And so that gives us an opportunity within the industry to cross-sell and upsell across our portfolio of capabilities, much like Jim has a variety of capabilities in his firm that they're trying to cross-sell and upsell. We're no different. And we're excited for the opportunity that is ahead of us as our end user community starts to spend money coming out of the pandemic. It's interesting, pandemic hit over 2 years ago. Nuclear power industry by nature is quick to respond in a crisis. That's hunker down, make sure everything's safe, but they're very slow to come back to pre-pandemic behaviors. And that's ingrained in the industrial culture. So we're pushing as fast as we can, as much as we can. The license capability is something that is readily adoptable, and that's grown nicely for us. But we're very eager to cross-sell and upsell the clients to take advantage of their recovery of spend, which is still ahead of us.
Well, it's been a great discussion. Unfortunately, I think that's all the time we have. I want to thank all the panelists as well as everyone listening. If any investors would like to get in touch with any of our panel companies, please reach out to myself or any member of the Lytham Partners team. Thank you very much again, and have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.